My mentally ill wife crashed our car for an insurance claim and accidentally unalived someone, then went totally insane during the prosecution process. Rachel had been struggling with depression for years before the accident. She'd been on medication, seeing a therapist twice a week, and I thought we had it under control. But looking back now, I missed every single warning sign. The crash happened on a Tuesday evening in March. Rachel was driving home from her sister's house on Highway 17 when she crossed the center line and hit another car head-on. The other driver, a 3-4-year-old woman named Michelle, died at the scene. Rachel survived with a broken collarbone and 3 cracked ribs. When I got to the hospital, Rachel was sedated and couldn't talk. The police officer waiting outside her room asked me questions I couldn't answer. Had Rachel been drinking? Was she suicidal? Had she mentioned anything about insurance money? I told him no to everything, because as far as I knew, it was all true. Rachel woke up the next morning and told me she couldn't remember anything. Complete blackout. The doctors said trauma could cause memory gaps, so I believed her. 2 weeks later, the police showed up at our house with a warrant. They'd found search history on Rachel's laptop. How much is accidental death insurance payout? Can police prove intentional car crash? Best ways to stage a car accident. The searches were dated 3 days before the crash. Rachel broke down crying and confessed everything. She said she'd planned to crash the car into a tree to collect the insurance money because we were drowning in debt. She never meant to hurt anyone else. She just lost control of the wheel. The prosecutor charged her with vehicular manslaughter and insurance fraud. Because of her mental health history, her lawyer pushed for a psychiatric evaluation. The court ordered her to be held at a state mental facility for 60 days while doctors assessed her competency to stand trial. I visited her every Sunday. The first few visits seemed normal. Rachel was quiet, remorseful, taking her medication. She'd cry and apologize and say she didn't know what she'd been thinking. But around the 3rd week, something shifted. She stopped making eye contact when I talked. She'd stare at a spot on the wall behind my head and smile at nothing. When I asked what she was thinking about, she'd say things like, "The numbers are lining up," or "Michelle understands now." I asked the doctors about it. They said she was adjusting to new medication and might seem a little off for a while. They assured me it was normal, but nothing about Rachel felt normal anymore. Week 5, she started writing in a journal obsessively. Pages and pages of tiny handwriting that she wouldn't let anyone read. When I reached for it during a visit, she pulled it away and said, "This is between me and Michelle." I told myself it was guilt, that she was processing what she'd done in her own way. But then the nurses started calling me with concerns. Rachel had been talking to herself at night, full conversations with someone who wasn't there. She'd answer questions nobody asked and laugh at jokes nobody told. One nurse said she found Rachel standing in the corner of her room at 3 a.m., whispering, "I'm sorry, but it had to be you." The competency evaluation came back inconclusive. The psychiatrist said Rachel showed signs of severe dissociation, but couldn't determine if it was genuine or performed. The prosecution argued she was faking to avoid prison. Her defense said she'd had a complete psychological break. The court scheduled a second evaluation with a different doctor. During that assessment, something happened that changed everything. Rachel told the psychiatrist she had proof that Michelle's death wasn't an accident after all, that she'd chosen Michelle specifically. The psychiatrist called me that same day. She asked if I knew anyone named Michelle before the accident. I said no. She asked if Rachel had ever mentioned the name before March. I thought about it. Then I remembered something that made my blood freeze. 3 months before the crash, Rachel had become obsessed with a true crime podcast about a woman who disappeared from our county in 2019. The victim's name was Michelle. I went home and searched Rachel's laptop more thoroughly than the police had. In a hidden folder, I found documents, research, photos of the Michelle who died in the crash, dated 6 months before the accident. Rachel had been following her, watching her routines, learning her schedule. The crash wasn't a random accident that went wrong, and it wasn't about insurance money at all. When I confronted Rachel at the facility, she finally looked me straight in the eyes for the first time in weeks. She smiled and said, "I wondered when you'd figure it out, because the rest of the story is on my channel or linked below." I leave the facility in a daze, Rachel's words ringing in my ears. "I wondered when you'd figure it out. The parking lot seems to stretch endlessly, and I fumble with my car keys 3 times before managing to unlock the door. My hands won't stop shaking. Detective Mercer calls me that evening. She wants me to come to the station tomorrow to review more evidence they found. There are things you need to see," she says, her voice carefully professional. "Things that might help us understand your wife's state of mind." I barely sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see Rachel's face, that eerie, knowing smile. By morning, I've convinced myself that the hidden folder was some kind of misunderstanding, that Rachel's obsession with the true crime podcast had somehow bled into something else, that there must be an explanation that doesn't turn my wife of 6 years into a stranger. Detective Mercer meets me at the precinct at 9 a.m. sharp. She leads me to a small room with a computer and 2 chairs. "Before I show you this," she says, "I need to know you're prepared. What we found goes beyond the insurance fraud angle. Just show me," I say, my voice hollow. She pulls up a folder of search history that the forensic team extracted from Rachel's devices. The searches about insurance were just the beginning. There were dozens more. Michelle Lawson, daily schedule. Michelle Lawson, boyfriend. How to follow someone without being noticed. Michelle Lawson, gym routine. How to cause fatal car accident. Highway 17 traffic patterns. Michelle Lawson, Tuesday commute. These date back almost 7 months. Detective Mercer says quietly, "Your wife was researching Miss Lawson extensively. We found evidence she tracked her movements, her routines, even her relationships." My stomach lurches. I don't understand. I never even heard of Michelle before the accident. "Are you certain about that?" Detective Mercer slides a photograph across the table. It's a picture of Michelle smiling, alive, standing outside what looks like an office building. The timestamp shows it was taken 4 months ago. "We found hundreds of these on a cloud backup linked to your wife's phone. She was surveilling Miss Lawson. This wasn't random." My phone rings, interrupting us. It's Dr. Winters from the psychiatric facility. I excuse myself to take the call in the hallway. "Mr. Collins, I'm calling about your wife. She's been making some concerning statements to our staff." "What kind of statements?" "She's been telling the nurses that Michelle is with her in her room, that they have long conversations conversations at night. She claims Michelle forgives her and understands why it had to happen. I lean against the wall, feeling suddenly lightheaded. What are you saying? We're adjusting her medication, but I wanted you to know that the dissociative episodes we observed seem to predate the accident. Her therapist's notes indicate she mentioned someone named Michelle back in January, 3 months before the crash. I hang up and return to Detective Mercer in a fog. She's pulled up more, files a journal entry. Rachel wrote, 2 weeks before the crash. Michelle took the same route again today. Highway 17 is always backed up around 5:30, but she takes it anyway. So predictable, so trusting. She doesn't deserve what she has. She doesn't deserve him. Tuesday will be perfect. Everything will finally be right. We need to search your home more thoroughly, Detective Mercer says. There may be additional evidence that could help us understand the extent of your wife's planning. I nod numbly and give my consent. 2 officers accompany me back to our house. They're methodical, respectful, even as they dismantle our life together. In Rachel's home office, they find a locked drawer I never knew existed. Inside is a small digital camera. The officer plugs it into his laptop. Dozens of photos of Michelle appear at coffee shops, walking to her car, shopping at the grocery store. In some, she's clearly unaware she's being photographed. In others, she's looking directly at the camera, smiling politely at whoever she thought was taking her picture. Did you ever meet Michelle Lawson? The officer asks. No, I say automatically, then hesitate. At least, I don't think so. My phone rings again. Rachel's therapist, Dr. Bennett. I just spoke with the facility, she says without preamble. I need to tell you something important. Rachel mentioned someone named Michelle in our sessions starting last December. I assumed it was a coworker or friend. She said Michelle was watching her and taking what should be hers. When I pressed for details, she would change the subject. I thank her and hang up, feeling sick. As the officers continue searching, my phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. This is Elaine Lawson, Michelle's sister. The police told us about your wife's obsession with Michelle. We need answers. Why was she stalking my sister? What did Michelle ever do to her? Call me. I sit heavily on the couch, unable to process everything. That's when one of the officers calls me to the bedroom. He's found Rachel's journal wedged between the mattress and box spring on her side of the bed. He hands me a pair of gloves before letting me flip through it. The entries start from about 8 months ago. The first mentions of Michelle appear 6 months before the crash. Saw her again today. Michelle. Even her name sounds fake. She doesn't see me, but I see her. I know her now. Better than she knows herself. Better than he knows her. She doesn't deserve any of it. The entries become increasingly disturbing. Dear Michelle, you don't know me yet, but you will. Or maybe you won't. Maybe it's better that way. Cleaner. I watch you get coffee every Tuesday and Thursday at 8:15. You always order the same thing. You're so predictable, so replaceable. I feel like I'm going to be sick. As I set the journal down, something falls from between its pages, a receipt. It's from a sporting goods store dated 1 week before the crash. The item purchased, a hunting knife. The officer bags it immediately. We'll need to find this, he says quietly. I nod, my world collapsing around me. Who was this woman I married? And what did Michelle Lawson have to do with us? As the officers finish their search, I sit alone in our living room, surrounded by the wreckage of what I thought was my life. My phone buzzes again. Another text from Elaine Lawson. The police found something you need to see. Michelle kept a journal too. Your wife's name is in it. This goes deeper than you know. The psychiatrist's office is silent, except for the ticking of an antique clock on the wall. Dr. Harmon sits across from me, her face carefully neutral as she reviews Rachel's second evaluation. I've been waiting for 15 minutes while she reads, each tick of that clock stretching into eternity. Mr. Collins, she finally says, setting down the folder. Your wife's evaluation indicates a severe delusional disorder with obsessive features. This goes beyond the depression she's been treated for previously. What does that mean exactly? My voice sounds hollow, even to me. It means Rachel constructed an elaborate alternative reality around Michelle Lawson. The crash wasn't impulsive. It was the culmination of a carefully constructed delusion that had been building for months. I think about the photos on the camera, the journal entries, Rachel's words to me during my last visit. My hands won't stop shaking. Will she ever? I trail off, not even sure what I'm asking. Recovery from delusional disorders is complex, Dr. Harmon says, especially when the delusion has led to violence. Right now, our focus is stabilization. On the drive home, I call Detective Mercer. She tells me they've found more recordings on Rachel's phone, voice memos of Michelle talking to coworkers, ordering coffee, even a phone conversation that Rachel must have recorded while sitting nearby in public. We need you to come in again tomorrow, she says. Michelle's family is requesting a meeting. They've filed a wrongful death lawsuit against both you and Rachel. Me? I didn't even know Michelle existed until after the crash. There's a pause on the line. They have reason to believe otherwise, Mr. Collins. I spend the night pacing our house, unable to sleep in our bed. Around 3 a.m., I find myself in the hallway, staring up at the attic access panel. In 6 years of marriage, I've only been up there a handful of times to store Christmas decorations or old tax documents. Rachel always said she was allergic to the dust. I pull down the ladder and climb up, my phone flashlight cutting through the darkness. Our storage boxes are stacked neatly against one wall, just as I remember. But on the far side, hidden behind an old dresser we never got around to refinishing, I spot something that makes my blood run cold. A small space has been cleared, the floor covered with a blue blanket. On it sits a collection of items arranged in a semicircle. A coffee cup with Michelle, written on it in marker, what looks like a hairbrush with lawn strands still caught in the bristles, a gym membership card, and several printed photos of Michelle arranged like a fan. In the center is a small notebook with M+J written on the cover, surrounded by small tea lights. I back away, nearly falling down the ladder in my haste to get away from this shrine. I call Detective Mercer immediately, my voice shaking as I describe what I've found. The next morning, I meet Michelle's sister Elaine at the police station. She's tall like Michelle was in the photos, with the same blonde hair, but her eyes are red-rimmed from crying and lack of sleep. I need to understand why your wife targeted my sister, she says without preamble. I don't know, I tell her honestly. I never even met Michelle. Elaine stares at me for a long moment. That's not true. Michelle dated you for 3 months before you met Rachel. The floor seems to drop out from under me. What? No, that's impossible. I would remember. 6 years ago. ago. You worked at Meridian Publishing. You went on exactly 7 dates before you told her you weren't ready for a relationship. 2 months later, you started dating Rachel. My mind races back. I did work at Meridian 6 years ago. I did date someone briefly before Rachel, but her name was... My thoughts stutter to a halt. I can't actually remember her name, just that she was blonde and we parted amicably. Michelle kept a journal. Elaine continues, pulling out her phone. She wrote about running into you and Rachel at Riverside Park last year. Rachel stared at her the whole time. Michelle thought it was strange that you acted like you didn't recognize her. She shows me a photo of a journal page. The handwriting is neat, feminine. Ran into Julian today at the park. He was with his wife, Rachel, I think. So awkward he pretended not to know me at all. His wife kept staring at me like she knew who I was. Creepy. Detective Mercer enters with a folder. We found this in your wife's belongings at the facility. She hands me a sheet of paper, a meticulous timeline of Michelle's last day alive, down to 15-minute increments, with her route to work highlighted. There's more, she says quietly. The tech team recovered deleted audio files from your wife's phone. Conversations recorded through Michelle's apartment window. Phone calls Rachel somehow managed to record. She was conducting extensive surveillance. That night, I visit Rachel again. She seems different, calmer, almost serene. Her hair is neatly brushed, and she's wearing the sweater I brought her last week. I heard you found my special place, she says, smiling. In the attic. Rachel, why? Why Michelle? Why would you do this? She deserved what happened, Rachel says, her voice suddenly cold. She thought she could just walk away from you and then come back years later. I saw how she looked at you in the park that day. She wanted you back. I barely remember dating her, I say, my voice breaking. It was years before I met you. Rachel's smile widens. It doesn't matter now. She's with me all the time. Inside me, she leans forward, whispering. Sometimes I can hear her thoughts. She understands now. She knows she was wrong. I leave the facility and vomit in the parking lot. When I get home, I tear through the house, looking for anything else Rachel might have hidden. In the back of our closet, behind a row of winter coats, I find a small wooden box. Inside is a diary with Rachel Sullivan, 1998, written on the first page. Rachel, at 13 years old. The entries start innocently enough: school drama, crushes, family fights. Then halfway through, a name begins appearing. Bethany. Rachel's descriptions of this girl become increasingly obsessive, tracking her movements, describing her clothes, her friends, her family. The final entry makes my skin crawl. Bethany won't be coming to school anymore. Mom says we have to move because of what happened. It's not fair. Bethany deserved it. She shouldn't have laughed at me. The doctors say I need special medicine now, but they don't understand. Bethany is always with me now. I call Detective Mercer immediately, my hands shaking so badly I can barely hold the phone. 3 days later, the prosecutor calls me. They're upgrading the charges against Rachel to first-degree murder based on the new evidence of premeditation and stalking. When I tell Rachel during my next visit, she simply stares at the wall behind me, humming softly. That night, my phone rings at 2 a.m. It's the facility. Rachel has attempted suicide by swallowing a hoarded collection of pills. She's in the ICU, stomach pumped, under 24-hour watch. As I drive to the hospital, all I can think is, did she do it because of the charges or because she thought it would bring her closer to Michelle? I drive to the hospital in a daze, the road blurring through my tears. Rachel's suicide attempt feels like the final betrayal, not of me, but of herself. Even in this, she couldn't be honest. Was it guilt, or was it something darker, something connected to her obsession with Michelle? The ICU is sterile and quiet at 3 a.m. A nurse leads me to Rachel's room, where she lies pale against white sheets, restraints securing her wrists to the bed rails. A tube snakes down her throat, the ventilator making a rhythmic whooshing sound. The nurse explains they pumped her stomach, found nearly 30 pills, a mix of her prescribed antidepressants and medications she must have stolen from other patients. She left this, the nurse says, handing me a folded piece of paper. We found it in her pocket. The note is brief, written in Rachel's familiar looping handwriting. Julian, I need to be with her. She's calling me. Michelle understands me now. I fold the paper and put it in my pocket, my hands trembling. 3 days later, Rachel is transferred back to the psychiatric facility, now under suicide watch. When I visit, she's sitting up in bed, looking almost peaceful. The bruising around her mouth from the intubation has faded to a yellowish smudge. Why did you do it? I ask, not bothering with pleasantries. Rachel smiles, that same eerie smile that's become so familiar. I wanted to see if she'd be there, waiting for me on the other side. She leans forward. She wasn't. She's still here, with me. Rachel, I need to understand. Why Michelle? What did she ever do to you? She was trying to take you back, Rachel says, her voice suddenly hard. I saw how she looked at you that day in the park. She thought I didn't know who she was, but I knew everything about her. She laughs, a brittle sound. She pretended not to recognize you, but I could tell. She wanted what was mine. We dated briefly, years before I met you. It wasn't serious. Liar, Rachel hisses, her calm demeanor cracking. I found her old texts to you. She kept them all this time, saved in her phone under a different name. She was waiting for the right moment to contact you again. I feel sick. You went through her phone? When? Rachel's expression shifts, becomes almost dreamy. I followed her home one night. She left her purse in her car while she carried groceries inside. It was so easy. Detective Mercer calls me the next morning. We found another laptop, she says without preamble, hidden in a storage unit rented under your wife's maiden name. At the station, Mercer shows me the contents. Hundreds of photos of Michelle, organized by date, location, activity. Some are taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. Others are clearly shot through windows or from hiding spots. The most disturbing are those taken while Michelle slept, the camera somehow positioned inside her bedroom. How did she get these? I whisper. We found evidence your wife had a key to Miss Lawson's apartment, Mercer says quietly. We're still investigating how she obtained it. There's a knock at the door, and another detective enters. Sir, we've received the complete autopsy report for Michelle Lawson. He glances at Mercer, who nods. Miss Lawson was approximately 10 weeks pregnant at the time of death. The room spins around me. Pregnant? Yes. We're running DNA tests to identify the father. I drive straight to the facility, demanding to see Rachel immediately. She's in the common room, writing in a new journal. When she sees my face, she closes it quickly. You knew Michelle was pregnant pregnant, I say, my voice shaking. That's why you did it then, isn't it? Rachel's face goes perfectly blank. She told me, she says finally, the day before. I followed her to her doctor's appointment, heard her on the phone afterward, telling someone she was going to finally tell him about the baby. She was going to use it to trap you. Rachel, I hadn't seen Michelle in years. That baby couldn't have been mine. You're lying, Rachel shouts, standing up so suddenly her chair falls backward. I saw the texts. I saw her plans. A nurse rushes over, but I wave her away. What texts, Rachel? Show me these texts you keep talking about. They're in my special box, the one you haven't found yet. She smiles again, that terrible knowing smile. Michelle wanted to replace me, so I replaced her instead. That evening, Detective Mercer calls again. Rachel's parents have arrived from Oregon, wanting to speak with me. We meet at a coffee shop near their hotel. There's something you need to know about Rachel, her mother says, her eyes red from crying. Something that happened when she was 13. Her father takes over. There was a girl, Bethany Mills. Rachel became fixated on her. It started innocently wanting the same clothes, the same hairstyle. Then it became more intense. Rachel began following her. Her mother continues, taking photos, stealing small items from her locker. Then Bethany started dating a boy Rachel liked. What happened? I ask, though I already suspect the answer from Rachel's childhood diary. Rachel attacked her with scissors during gym class, cut her face badly. She needed 40 stitches. Bethany's family moved away after that. We had to move too. Start fresh. Rachel was diagnosed with delusional disorder and obsessive tendencies. She was hospitalized for 6 months. Why didn't you tell me this before we got married? I ask, anger rising through my shock. She was better, her father insists. The doctors said she was responding to treatment. She hadn't had an episode in years. We thought, we hoped. The next day, I returned to our house with Detective Mercer. We searched for hours before finding Rachel's special box hidden inside a hollowed-out section of our bedroom wall, behind a framed wedding photo. Inside is a phone, not Rachel's, but a cheap burner and a journal. The phone contains what appear to be screenshots of text messages between Michelle and someone saved as Jay. But looking closer, I can tell they're fabricated. The formatting is wrong. The timestamp's inconsistent. The journal is worse. Page after page of detailed fantasies where Rachel describes replacing Michelle in my life, taking her identity, her possessions, even her body. The final entry, dated the day before the crash, is chilling. Tomorrow, Michelle becomes part of me forever. Her life ends, mine truly begins. Julian will never know the difference once I'm carrying her child. I hand the journal to Detective Mercer with shaking hands. She was planning to fake a pregnancy, I say. She didn't know Michelle was actually pregnant. 2 days later, the prosecutor offers Rachel a plea deal. Guilty, but mentally ill. 20 years in a secure psychiatric facility instead of life in prison. I visit Rachel to tell her about the offer. They found your special box, I say. They know everything, Rachel. She stares at me, unblinking. Michelle doesn't want me to take the deal. Michelle is dead, Rachel. You killed her. No, Rachel says, her voice eerily calm. She wanted to die. She told me so. When? When did she tell you that? The moment before we crashed. I saw it in her eyes. She knew it was her time. Rachel leans forward. She lives through me now. Sometimes I can feel her baby moving inside me. I leave without another word, knowing I've lost Rachel forever, not to mental illness, but to a delusion so complete it's become her reality. As I walk to my car, my phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. DNA results conclusive. Father of Michelle Lawson's unborn child identified as Christopher Lawson, her ex-husband. Case file updated. I stare at the message, feeling a strange mix of relief and deeper horror. Rachel destroyed 3 lives, Michelle's, her unborn child's, and her own, over a delusion that had no basis in reality at all. The courtroom feels unnaturally cold as I take my seat in the front row. Rachel is being led in through a side door, her hands cuffed in front of her. She's wearing a pale blue blouse I've never seen before, her hair neatly styled. If I didn't know better, I'd think she was heading to a job interview, not the first day of her murder trial. What strikes me most is her demeanor. There's a serene calm about her that chills me more than any outburst could. She scans the courtroom methodically until her eyes find mine. She smiles that same knowing smile and nods slightly, as if we're sharing some private understanding. All rise. The bailiff calls, and Judge Harmon enters. The proceedings begin with opening statements. The prosecutor, Miss Daniels, lays out the case with clinical precision. Premeditation, stalking, obsession, murder. She describes the months Rachel spent following Michelle, the research, the planning, the final, fatal collision on Highway 17 that Tuesday evening in March. Rachel's defense attorney, Mr. Linden, presents his case next. He doesn't dispute the facts, they're too well documented, but argues diminished capacity. My client was suffering a psychotic break, he says. Her documented history of mental illness, her depression, her dissociative episodes, these aren't excuses, but they are explanations. Throughout it all, Rachel sits perfectly still, occasionally writing notes on a yellow legal pad. She doesn't react to the crime scene photos, doesn't flinch when they show Michelle's crushed car on Highway 17. She simply watches, almost studiously, like she's observing someone else's trial. On the third day, Michelle's family takes the stand. Her mother can barely speak through her tears. Her father stares at Rachel with undisguised hatred. But it's Michelle's sister Elaine whose testimony sends ripples through the courtroom. In the weeks before my sister's death, Elaine says, her voice steady despite her grief, she received strange calls. Sometimes the caller would just breathe and hang up. Other times, they would ask questions about her daily routine, claiming to be from market research companies or local businesses. Did your sister report these calls? Miss Daniels asks. Yes. The police told her they couldn't do much unless there were explicit threats. But the week before she died, something changed. Elaine pauses, composing herself. Michelle found a note on her car windshield that said, I know about the baby. He deserves to know too. I feel the blood drain from my face. Rachel never mentioned a note. Michelle was terrified. Elaine continues. She thought it was from her ex-husband. She never suspected. Her voice breaks. She never imagined it was someone she didn't even know. During a recess, Detective Mercer approaches me in the hallway. How are you holding up? How are you holding up? I shake my head. I don't know who she is anymore. The woman in there, that's not the Rachel I married. People with delusional disorders can compartmentalize remarkably well, Mercer says. They can appear completely normal in most aspects of their lives while maintaining elaborate delusions in others. When court resumes, Rachel's former therapist, Dr. Bennett, takes the stand. She testifies about Rachel's depression, her twice-weekly therapy sessions, the medication that seemed to be working. There were no indications of homicidal ideation, she says. But looking back, there were warning signs I missed. She began mentioning feeling replaced or erased about 6 months before the incident. On the 5th day, something unexpected happens. During a conference at the judge's bench, Rachel suddenly stands. "I want to testify," she announces loudly enough for everyone to hear. Her attorney spins around, alarmed. "Rachel, we discussed this. I strongly advise against." "It's my right," Rachel says calmly. "I want to tell my side." Judge Harmon calls both attorneys to chambers. When they return 30 minutes later, Rachel's lawyer looks defeated. The judge announces that the defendant will be permitted to testify against counsel's advice. The next morning, Rachel takes the stand. She's sworn in, her voice clear and steady as she promises to tell the truth. Miss Daniels begins her questioning cautiously. "Mrs. Collins, did you deliberately crash your car into Michelle Lawson's vehicle on Highway 17 on March 12th? "Yes," Rachel says simply. A murmur runs through the courtroom. Her attorney closes his eyes briefly. "And did you plan this crash in advance?" "I did." "Why did you target Michelle Lawson specifically?" Rachel looks directly at me as she answers. "Because she stole my life. She was trying to replace me with herself." "Could you explain what you mean by that?" "Michelle and Julian had a connection I could never break. She was waiting for the right moment to take him back. I found the evidence, the texts, the photos. She was pregnant, and she was going to use that to trap him." "Mrs. Collins, the DNA results confirm that Michelle Lawson's unborn child was fathered by her ex-husband, not your husband." Rachel smiles that eerie smile again. "That's what the tests say, but I know the truth." "Did you follow Michelle Lawson for months before the crash?" "I watched her. I needed to understand her to become her." "Become her?" Miss Daniels repeats. "Yes, it was destined. Michelle needed to become part of me so I could be complete." Rachel leans forward. "And now she is. She lives through me. Sometimes she whispers to me at night. She understands now." The courtroom is completely silent. Even the judge appears stunned. After 3 hours of deliberation, the jury returns with their verdict. Guilty of first-degree murder, but mentally ill. The judge sentences Rachel to indefinite commitment at a secure psychiatric facility rather than prison. As the bailiffs lead her away, Rachel turns to look at me one last time. "Tell Michelle's parents I'm taking good care of their grandchild," she calls out. "She's growing inside me now." 2 weeks later, I visit Rachel at the psychiatric facility. It's not for reconciliation or understanding. Those possibilities are long gone. It's for closure, for me to finally say goodbye to the woman I thought I knew. She's sitting in the garden, writing in a journal. When she sees me, she closes it quickly. "Julian," she says, smiling, "I knew you'd come back. This is the last time, Rachel. I'm selling the house, moving away. It doesn't matter where you go," she says, her voice gentle. "We'll find you. Michelle and we're together now. We'll always be watching over you." I feel a chill run down my spine. "The baby wasn't mine, Rachel. You killed 2 innocent people for nothing. The doctors here don't believe me either," she says, unfazed. "They think I'm imagining the baby, but I can feel her growing. Michelle's daughter, our daughter." I stand to leave, unable to bear anymore. As I turn to go, Rachel calls after me. "You missed all the signs, Julian. For months, they were right in front of you. Michelle's photos on my laptop, the times I disappeared for hours, the night I came home with her lipstick on my collar and told you it was mine." She laughs softly. "You never even questioned it." I walk away without looking back, her words echoing in my head. That night, as I pack up my house, I find myself searching through old photos, old calendars, old memories. Were there signs I missed? Red flags I ignored? The Rachel I married and the woman in that facility seem like completely different people. But maybe they weren't. Maybe the seeds were always there, waiting for the right conditions to grow into something monstrous. I think about Bethany, the girl from Rachel's childhood. I think about Michelle, who never knew she was being hunted. I think about all the moments when I could have seen something was wrong, but chose not to look closer. The sold sign goes up in front of the house the next day. I've accepted a job 3 states away, somewhere Rachel has never been, where the name Michelle Lawson means nothing to anyone. But as I drive away for the last time, I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched not by Rachel, but by all the versions of her I never knew existed.